The annual high society fundraiser at the St. Clair estate was Clara's least favorite night of the year. She'd spent most of her life attending these lavish events, filled with polished laughter, clinking glasses, and endless polite small talk. Tonight, however, her attention shifted when she heard a low, compelling voice from the stage. Jake stood under the spotlight, dressed in a simple suit that barely masked his rugged demeanor. He wasn't like the other men Clara usually saw at these events. Clara learned that he was here on behalf of Second Chances, an organization that helped ex-convicts reintegrate into society. She couldn't look away as Jake spoke passionately about his experiences and the power of redemption. Each word painted a picture of his struggles and the hurdles he still faced in a world that seemed determined to hold him back. As the crowd shifted uncomfortably, Clara noticed her father's disapproving glare fixed on Jake. But something about Jake's words struck her deeply. After the speech, Clara found herself moving toward him, an inexplicable pull drawing her in. When she reached him, they exchanged a brief introduction, and Clara sensed a connection immediately, one that made her feel grounded in a way her world of privilege never had. Their conversation flowed naturally, and as they talked, Clara's carefully constructed life seemed distant. When she returned to her family, her father's stern expression met her. His cold comment about fraternizing with questionable people lingered in her mind long after the night ended. But despite the warning, Clara couldn't shake the intrigue Jake had awakened in her. In the days following the fundraiser, Clara found herself obsessing over the memory of Jake's speech. Despite her father's clear disapproval, she felt compelled to see him again, curious about the life he represented, a life so far from her own. Finally, she took a bold step, deciding to visit him downtown at a small cafe where he spent his mornings. The cafe was unlike any place she'd been before, its worn wooden tables and mismatched chairs adding a charm foreign to her pristine world. As she spotted Jake by the window, reading a worn paperback, her heart skipped a beat. She approached, feeling both nervous and excited. Surprised but pleased to see her, Jake invited her to join him. Over coffee they shared stories, her stories of privilege and comfort contrasting starkly with his tales of hardship and struggle. She learned more about his past, how one reckless mistake had led to a conviction and years behind bars. He'd fought hard to rebuild his life, but society's barriers were unforgiving. Their conversation continued for hours, and Clara felt a warmth she hadn't felt in ages. Jake's honesty and resilience drew her in, making her yearn to understand more about his world. However, as they spoke, she couldn't ignore the looming sense of guilt. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of the expectations she was now defying. As she walked away from the cafe, she knew her life was about to change. Jake had given her a glimpse into a world where survival depended on more than social status, and she was captivated by it. Clara knew she was treading dangerous ground, but she couldn't keep herself from wanting to spend more time with Jake. In the following weeks, they met frequently, usually in secret, away from the prying eyes of her social circle. Each encounter peeled back another layer of her carefully constructed life, exposing her to a rawness she'd never known. Jake introduced her to places she'd never been, a modest art gallery in a bustling neighborhood, a community garden he helped build, and a small theater where ex-convicts put on plays to share their stories. Clara felt a surge of liberation with him, realizing she had been living in a gilded cage, her life mapped out by expectations she'd never questioned. Her connection with Jake felt as natural as breathing, yet the weight of her family's expectations lingered in the background, an ever-present reminder that this world was forbidden for someone of her status. She knew the consequences of her actions could be severe, especially with her father's strong opinions on social standing and reputation. One night, after a long day together exploring the city, Jake walked her back to her car. They lingered in the dim glow of the streetlights, the air thick with unspoken words. As they shared a tentative first kiss, Clara felt something click into place, a confirmation of the bond they had formed. But with it came a new layer of tension. For now, their relationship had moved beyond friendship. Returning home, Clara found herself overcome by conflicting emotions. She felt alive and free, but was haunted by the fear of her father's reaction. She knew the boundary she had crossed could not be undone, yet a part of her felt that this was just the beginning of a journey she needed to follow. It didn't take long for Clara's father to notice the changes in her. Her frequent absences, the vague excuses, and her increasing distance had not gone unnoticed. One evening, during a family dinner, he confronted her directly, his tone cold and demanding. "Where exactly have you been spending all this time, Clara?" he asked, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. Clara felt her heart race, but she held her ground. She couldn't lie. Not anymore. "I've been seeing someone," she admitted, her voice steady but soft. "His name is Jake." Her father's face darkened. "Isn't he that ex-convict from the fundraiser? Clara, associating with someone like him can ruin everything we've built. Do you realize what this could do to our reputation?" Her mother sat silently, her face pale, while her father's words stung with a mixture of anger and disappointment. Clara felt a surge of defiance. "Jake isn't just someone like him," she countered. "He's a person who's fought to rebuild his life. He deserves a chance, just like anyone else." But her father's mind was made up. "This infatuation needs to end, Clara," he said sharply, "for the sake of your future and our family's reputation." Clara left the table, hurt and frustrated, her father's words echoing in her mind. She knew that breaking off with Jake would crush her, but staying with him could mean losing her family's support entirely. The weight of her decision settled heavily on her, marking the beginning of a deep rift between her and her family. Yet, she also felt a newfound sense of determination to fight for what she truly believed in. After the confrontation with her father, Clara felt even more compelled to stand by Jake's side. However, she realized the complexity of their relationship when she invited him to a small gathering with her friends, hoping to bridge the gap between her world and his. She believed that her friends, people she had known for years, would see Jake for who he truly was. The event started well enough, with Clara and Jake arriving together at a stylish rooftop lounge in the city. Yet, it quickly became clear that her friends were uneasy. Polite smiles barely masked their judgment, and undercurrents of disdain threaded through their casual remarks. One friend asked Jake where he learned his manners, while another commented on his unique life choices. Clara watched as Jake's face grew tense, trying to maintain his composure despite the indirect insults. As the night wore on, Clara's frustration mounted. She wanted her friends to see Jake's worth and integrity, but it was as if his past overshadowed everything. When they finally left, she apologized profusely, but Jake only shrugged. He'd grown used to the assumptions people made, he explained, and he had long since stopped trying to change their minds. The experience left Clara shaken. For the first time, she understood just how deeply ingrained prejudice could be, even in those closest to her. As they walked away, she felt a renewed sense of loyalty to Jake and an even stronger desire to challenge the assumptions of her world. Following the disastrous night with her friends, Clara found herself even more determined to support Jake. Their connection deepened as they began spending time in his world, one filled with people who had experienced hardship but were full of resilience and hope. Clara found a kind of peace and acceptance among them, something she had rarely felt within her own social circle. One day, Jake took her to meet his former parole officer, a man who had helped him adjust after his release. The visit was eye-opening for Clara. Hearing more of Jake's story, the battles he fought internally, and the sacrifices he made, only strengthened her admiration for him. She began to see Jake not as someone needing her help, but as an equal partner, someone with as much to teach her as she could offer him. Together, they navigated his community, meeting people from different backgrounds who shared their stories of struggle and perseverance. In one poignant moment, Clara watched as Jake counseled a young man recently released from prison, offering encouragement and guidance. She saw him in a new light, as someone who had not only rebuilt his life, but was also committed to helping others do the same. Their relationship became a source of strength for both of them, allowing Clara to see a future beyond her family's expectations. She realized that, though she would face countless challenges ahead, Jake was the person she wanted beside her, no matter what her family thought. Clara's growing commitment to Jake didn't go unnoticed, and soon, her father decided to take a firm stance. One evening, he asked her to join him in his study, his expression cold and unwavering. She could tell this was not going to be a simple conversation. Her father didn't waste time. "Clara, this has gone far enough. I've tried to be patient, hoping you'd see reason, but it seems you're determined to pursue this relationship. You have a choice to make. End things with Jake and preserve the family name, or continue down this reckless path and lose everything we've provided for you." Clara's heart pounded as she realized the weight of her father's ultimatum. Her future, her inheritance, and the comfort of her family's support were all on the line. She couldn't imagine life without the security she had always known, yet the thought of losing Jake, who had become her anchor, was just as unbearable. She tried to reason with her father, explaining that Jake was a good man, someone who had changed and deserved a second chance. But her father was unrelenting, viewing Jake as a blemish that could never be erased from their lives. Clara left the study, feeling as if her entire world was closing in on her. The ultimatum left her in turmoil. She wrestled with the idea of giving up everything she'd ever known for a man her family would never accept. But with every passing day, her decision became clearer. She couldn't turn her back on Jake. Even if it meant losing her family's support, her love for him outweighed the comforts she'd been raised to value. For the first time, she realized that freedom might come at a high cost, but it was a price she was willing to pay. After the ultimatum, Clara was emotionally exhausted and knew she needed time to think. Jake noticed the change in her, the weight of her decision pressing down on her spirit. She confided in him, revealing the ultimatum her father had given her, and for the first time, Jake suggested they take a step back. He didn't want to be the reason she lost everything. Clara was torn. Jake's suggestion felt like a rejection, even though she knew he was only trying to protect her. She reluctantly agreed to take a break, hoping it would give her time to clear her mind and make a decision without the emotional weight of their relationship clouding her judgment. The days that followed were a struggle. Clara threw herself into her work, hoping to distract herself from the void Jake's absence had left. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was only half alive, missing the person who had shown her a life beyond the constraints of her family's world. Jake, meanwhile, felt his own pangs of doubt. He wanted to respect Clara's need for space, but the thought of losing her was equally painful. He began to question if he'd made a mistake by suggesting the break, but he didn't want to reach out and pressure her, knowing how fragile her position was. The time apart became a breaking point for Clara, forcing her to confront her deepest fears and desires. She realized that a life without Jake felt incomplete, that her heart had already made its choice long before her mind caught up. She needed to face her father and stand firm, choosing a future on her terms, even if it meant sacrificing the comfort of her past. With the decision weighing heavily on her, Clara found herself delving deeper into her family's history, trying to understand the roots of her father's rigid values. She came across an old photo album in the attic, one she'd never seen before. Inside, there was a photo of her father as a young man, standing with a woman Clara didn't recognize. They looked close, their expressions warm and intimate, a stark contrast to the stoic, formal image her father always projected. Curious, she approached her mother with the photo, hoping to get answers. Her mother's face paled as she saw it, and after a long silence, she revealed the truth. The woman in the photo had been her father's first love, someone he had given up to marry into a prominent family, ensuring his place in high society. Her father's decision to sacrifice his love for social status had shaped the values he instilled in Clara and her siblings, believing that loyalty to family legacy outweighed personal happiness. The revelation hit Clara hard, as she realized that her father's disapproval of Jake was not just about reputation, it was a projection of his own regrets. Clara felt a strange mix of anger and sympathy, seeing her father's strict values in a new light. This knowledge strengthened her resolve, confirming that she didn't want to live with the same regrets. She decided it was time to confront him, not as a rebellious daughter, but as someone determined to live her life free from the shadows of his past mistakes. Armed with newfound understanding, Clara arranged to meet her father in his study, the same place where he had given her the ultimatum. This time, however, she felt different, clear, resolute, and unafraid. She knew what she wanted, and she was determined to make him understand that her life was hers to live. As she entered, her father's stern expression told her he wasn't expecting an easy conversation. Clara began by showing him the photos she'd found, explaining how she now understood the sacrifices he had made and the burden of his choices. She acknowledged a life he had built for her and expressed her gratitude, but firmly stated that she would not make the same sacrifices for the sake of the family's name. Her father listened in silence, his face unreadable, but she could see a glimmer of something, a crack in his facade. Clara explained that Jake was more than a mistake or a threat to their reputation. He was a person who had overcome hardships, someone she loved and respected, and someone who represented everything she valued about freedom and resilience. Though he didn't relent immediately, her father's composure wavered. For the first time, Clara sensed a hint of regret in his voice as he spoke about his own past. Yet, his final words were as resolute as ever. He could not support her decision, but he would not stand in her way. The conversation left Clara both saddened and relieved. She had hoped for acceptance, but she knew that her father's acknowledgement of her autonomy was enough. She walked out of the study feeling as though she had finally claimed her independence, ready to embrace her future with Jake, even if it meant stepping away from her family's legacy. After the intense conversation with her father, Clara knew there was no turning back. She packed a few essentials, leaving behind the comfort and luxury of her family's estate to start a new life with Jake. He was waiting for her at the small apartment they had rented together, modest yet filled with the promise of freedom and self-reliance. Their first days together were challenging. Clara had never managed a household on her own before, and adjusting to a life without servants or endless resources was humbling. But Jake's patient guidance and encouragement helped her adapt. He taught her simple skills, from cooking basic meals to budgeting their limited funds. Each small accomplishment filled Clara with a quiet pride she had never felt in her former life. As they settled into their new routine, Clara felt a profound sense of peace. Although their life was far from the luxury she had known, the independence she found in her small acts of self-sufficiency made it worth every sacrifice. Together, they began to shape a life filled with purpose and love, their relationship growing stronger as they navigated the challenges of their new lifestyle. One evening, as they sat on their small balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Clara felt a rush of gratitude for the choices she'd made. She realized that for the first time, she was building a life that was truly hers, a life she had chosen, free from the weight of her family's expectations. As Clara adjusted to her new life, she found an unexpected ally in her best friend, Lila. Though Lila had initially been skeptical of Clara's decision to leave her family and be with Jake, she gradually began to see the changes in Clara, her newfound independence, her sense of fulfillment, and the love she shared with Jake. Moved by her friend's happiness, Lila decided to lend her support. One afternoon, Lila invited Clara out for coffee, and the two caught up like old times. To Clara's surprise, Lila offered to help her and Jake find job opportunities and shared advice on adjusting to life outside the social circles they had once known. Clara was touched by her friend's gesture, realizing that Lila's support was a reminder that true friendship went beyond social status. With Lila's assistance, Clara and Jake managed to find small jobs that would allow them to sustain their modest lifestyle. Lila even helped Clara secure a part-time position at a local art gallery, where she could finally explore her own interests and develop her skills. The experience brought Clara a sense of purpose and confidence, reinforcing her belief in the path she had chosen. Lila's friendship became a source of strength for Clara, easing her transition and helping her navigate the unfamiliar terrain of her new life. Clara began to realize that, though she had left behind her family's wealth, she hadn't lost everything. Her journey had revealed the true friends who stood by her, proving that genuine support was more valuable than any inheritance. Back at the St. Clair estate, Clara's absence was felt more deeply than her family had anticipated. Her father's attempts to keep her departure quiet had failed, and soon the social circles they inhabited were buzzing with rumors. Some speculated that Clara's involvement with an ex-convict had caused her to leave, while others questioned the family's control over their own. This scrutiny put pressure on the St. Clair family business, as clients and partners began to grow wary of the family's stability and reputation. Clara's father struggled to maintain control, attempting to assure everyone that their legacy was intact. However, the whispers and doubts continued to erode the family's influence, impacting their business dealings and reputation within elite society. Meanwhile, Clara's mother found herself quietly reflecting on her daughter's decision. She had initially agreed with her husband's position, believing that Clara's actions were reckless. But as the days passed, she couldn't shake a lingering sense of pride in her daughter's bravery and commitment to her values. Though she couldn't openly support Clara's choice, a part of her began to question the sacrifices she herself had made over the years. Clara remained unaware of these developments, focused on building her life with Jake. But the rift between her and her family continued to grow, affecting both sides in unexpected ways. Her departure had shaken the foundation of her family's world, forcing them to confront the legacy they had built and the costs it had come with. One evening, Clara received an unexpected message from her father. He asked to meet her, offering an opportunity to discuss her future. The tone was formal, almost distant, and Clara sensed that he intended this as a last chance for reconciliation on his terms. Clara was apprehensive, but agreed to meet him. They chose a quiet restaurant, far from the prying eyes of society, allowing them a private space for a conversation long overdue. Her father arrived on time, his demeanor as imposing as ever, but Clara saw something different in his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability she had never witnessed before. He began by urging her to consider returning to the family, hinting that they would welcome her back if she were willing to end her relationship with Jake. He argued that her place was with her family, that they needed her to uphold the legacy they had worked so hard to build. But Clara, though respectful, stood firm. She explained that she had made her choice, that her happiness and fulfillment mattered more than maintaining appearances. She told him that she loved Jake, that he represented the values she wanted in her life: honesty, resilience, and kindness. She no longer wished to live a life dictated by others' expectations. Her father's mask of authority wavered. He didn't relent, but Clara could sense his struggle, the weight of his own regrets mingling with his disappointment. In a final, resigned gesture, he expressed his unwillingness to support her decision, but acknowledged her right to choose her path. It was a bittersweet moment. Though he wouldn't give his blessing, he offered a semblance of acceptance, a reluctant acknowledgement of her autonomy. Clara left the meeting feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. She had hoped for full acceptance, but she knew that even this strained acknowledgement was a victory. She had confronted her family and emerged with her values intact, ready to move forward with Jake and the life they were building together. With the final confrontation behind her, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. She and Jake continued working on building their life together, each day strengthening their bond and establishing a foundation of love and mutual respect. The small business they had started together began to gain traction in the community, and Clara found fulfillment in the work she was doing, something she had never experienced in the corporate world her family had intended for her. The art gallery job that Lila had helped her secure became more than just a way to make ends meet. Clara grew close to the artists and patrons who frequented the gallery, discovering a new passion for connecting people with creative expression. Jake continued his work mentoring young people facing similar struggles to those he had once endured, and together, they supported one another's dreams. Life was modest, and challenges still arose, but Clara felt a profound contentment in the life they were building. She had found a purpose that extended beyond herself, one rooted in authenticity and love. Clara knew that, though she had left behind wealth and privilege, she had gained something far greater, freedom and a life she had chosen on her own terms. Months passed, and Clara and Jake's life began to settle into a steady rhythm. They celebrated small victories, expanding their business, deepening their friendships, and finding joy in the little things. Clara's relationship with her family remained strained, but she sensed that her mother was beginning to understand the choices she had made. Occasionally, Clara would receive a letter from her mother, expressing quiet support and asking for updates about her new life, hinting at the possibility of future reconciliation. One evening, Clara and Jake hosted a small gathering at their apartment. Friends from different walks of life filled their home with laughter, music, and warmth. As she looked around the room, Clara felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She had created a world where love, acceptance, and resilience mattered more than wealth and status. In that moment, Clara realized she had come full circle. She had walked away from a life of privilege to find herself, and in doing so, she had created a life filled with meaning and belonging. The sacrifices she had made felt distant as she embraced the richness of the life she and Jake had forged together. As the night wound down, Clara and Jake stood on their balcony, gazing out over the city that had once seemed so foreign. They had made it their own, one step at a time. Clara knew that, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They had built a life rooted in love, and that was all the legacy she needed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It really helps us create more stories you'll love. We'd also love to hear from you. What moment or message had the most impact on you? Let us know in the comments. And if you have any story ideas or themes you'd like to see in future videos, share them below. Your feedback and suggestions mean the world to us, and we can't wait to bring your ideas to life.